The rain hammered against my office window like bullets, each drop exploding into smaller fragments that traced erratic paths down the glass. It was 3 in the morning, and I sat in my leather chair, staring at the photographs spread across my mahogany desk like a deck of cards dealt by the devil himself. My wife Monroe, her auburn hair catching the motel's neon light, her lips pressed against another man's mouth in a kiss that spoke of familiarity, of routine, of betrayal so casual it made my stomach turn. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Finley Varlin, 45 years old, architect by trade, fool by marriage. For 18 years, I'd built a life with Monroe Calver, constructed it beam by beam, room by room, like the Victorian houses I specialized in restoring. Our own home was my masterpiece, a sprawling 3-story testament to craftsmanship, complete with original crown molding, hardwood floors that gleamed like honey, and enough hidden spaces to store a lifetime of secrets. Apparently, Monroe had been storing hers elsewhere. The photographs told a story more detailed than any blueprint I'd ever drawn. Monroe entering the Riverside Motel with Dr. Jory Trentell, the town's golden boy dentist. Monroe leaving 3 hours later, her hair mussed, her blouse wrinkled. Monroe meeting him at Giuseppe's, our anniversary restaurant, feeding him dessert with the same silver spoon I'd given her for our 10th wedding anniversary. The private investigator, Mason Reeves, my old friend from high school, had done thorough work. Too thorough. I heard the front door open downstairs, followed by the familiar click of Monroe's heels on the hardwood. She was back from her latest yoga retreat, a weekend affair that had become as regular as Sunday Mass for the truly devout. The irony wasn't lost on me. Monroe had found religion, all right, but it wasn't the kind that involved meditation mats and inner peace. Finley? Her voice drifted up the stairs, honey-sweet and practiced. Are you awake, honey? I gathered the photographs, slipped them into a manila envelope, and walked downstairs. Monroe stood in our foyer, her yoga bag slung over her shoulder, her face glowing with what she'd probably describe as post-meditation serenity. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. 38 years old and still turning heads at the grocery store, still making other men stumble over their words. I used to feel proud of that. Now it just made me tired. How was the retreat? I asked, my voice steady as a level. Transformative. She set down her bag and moved toward me, arms outstretched for our customary welcome home embrace. I feel so centered, so connected to my true self. I didn't move. Your true self. That's interesting. Something flickered in her green eyes. A shadow of uncertainty, quickly masked. You seem tense. Bad day at the office? Actually, I had quite an enlightening weekend myself. I pulled out my phone, swiped to the photo gallery, and held it out to her. I've been exploring photography. What do you think of my composition skills? The phone displayed one of Mason's clearest shots. Monroe and Jory in the motel parking lot, his hand on her lower back, her face tilted up toward his with unmistakable intimacy. The timestamp read, Saturday, 2:47 p.m., exactly when she'd texted me about achieving a breakthrough in her warrior pose. Monroe's face went through a fascinating transformation. First, the color drained from her cheeks like water from a broken dam. Then her eyes widened, pupils dilating as if she'd been struck. Finally, her features hardened into the expression I'd seen her use on opposing counsel: cold, calculating, dangerous. Where did you get this? Her voice had lost all its honey sweetness. Does it matter? The question is, how long has this been going on? She snatched the phone from my hands, scrolling through the other images with increasing desperation. You had me followed? You hired someone to spy on your own wife? I hired someone to confirm what I already knew. The late-night phone calls you take in the bathroom. The new lingerie that never makes an appearance in our bedroom. The way you've been looking at me lately, like I'm a piece of furniture you're planning to replace. Monroe's lawyer training kicked in. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and launched into damage control mode. This is a violation of my privacy, Finley. Whatever you think you saw, I think I saw my wife of 18 years sleeping with the local dentist at a motel that charges by the hour. But please, correct me if I'm wrong about the details. The word sleeping hung in the air between us like a slap. Monroe flinched, actually stepped backward. In all our years together, through all our arguments and disagreements, I'd never spoken to her with such crude directness. I was the polite one, the diplomatic one, the one who chose his words carefully and never raised his voice. "You're being deliberately vulgar," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm being accurate. Would you prefer I use euphemisms? Should I say you've been finding yourself with Dr. Trentell, exploring your spiritual side, practicing yoga positions that require a partner? Stop it. Or we could go with the classics, having an affair, cheating on your husband, breaking your marriage vows, betraying the man who's loved you for 2 decades. I said stop it! She threw my phone at the wall, where it hit with a satisfying crack before clattering to the floor. You don't understand. You don't understand anything about what I need, what I've been going through. I walked over, picked up my phone, and checked the screen. Cracked but functional, like our marriage, I supposed. What you've been going through. Enlighten me, Monroe. What terrible hardship drove you into another man's bed? You wouldn't understand. Try me. I'm an architect. I'm good at understanding how things fall apart. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Genuine fear. Not of me. I'd never raised a hand to her. Never would. But of the situation, of being caught, of facing consequences she hadn't planned for. I'm not discussing this with you tonight, she said finally. I'm exhausted, and you're obviously in no state for a rational conversation. I'm perfectly rational. In fact, I'm probably thinking more clearly than I have in months. Amazing how much mental fog lifts once you stop gaslighting yourself. She turned toward the stairs, dismissing me with the kind of gesture she'd perfected in courtrooms. We'll talk about this tomorrow when you've calmed down. No, we won't. She paused, one foot on the bottom step. What do you mean? I mean the time for talking is over, Monroe. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. She turned back to face me, and for the first time since she'd walked through the door, she looked genuinely concerned. What are you planning to do? I smiled. Not a pleasant expression, I'm sure, but satisfying in its honesty. I'm not planning anything. I'm executing. The planning phase ended 3 months ago when I first suspected. The investigation phase wrapped up this weekend. Now comes implementation. Implementation of what? You'll see. But here's a preview. I'm very good at my job, Monroe. I've built a career on taking broken down structures and either restoring them or tearing them down completely. I've never failed to complete a project. I walked past her toward the stairs, pausing just close enough to smell the unfamiliar cologne clinging to her clothes. Something expensive and European that definitely didn't come from my medicine cabinet. Sweet dreams, I said. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, surrounded by 18 years of marriage documentation spread across every available surface. Bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, calendar entries, the paper trail of a life I'd thought I understood. Mason had been thorough, but I needed to be more than thorough. I needed to be surgical. The first surprise came in our joint checking account. Over the past 8 months, Monroe had withdrawn nearly $15,000 in cash, small amounts, never more than $300 at a time, always from different ATMs around town. The withdrawals corresponded perfectly with her yoga retreat schedule. Apparently, enlightenment was expensive. The second surprise was her credit card statement. charges at Victoria's Secret, Fredericks of Hollywood, a boutique lingerie shop in Portland that I'd never heard of, dinner at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel charges in cities where she'd supposedly been attending legal seminars, except I'd called 3 of the hotels and none had any record of legal conferences on those dates. But the real revelation came from her phone records. Mason had worked his ex-cop connections to get detailed billing information, and the pattern was unmistakable. Starting 9 months ago, Monroe had been exchanging dozens of text messages daily with a number registered to Jory Trentell. The frequency had increased over time, reaching a peak of over 100 messages in a single day last month. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. The rain had stopped and dawn was beginning to creep through the windows, painting everything in shades of gray that matched my mood. 18 years of marriage, and I'd been living with a stranger. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. Coffee? Got more info. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Mason Reeves in Donut Dreams, the only place in town that opened before 6 a.m. Mason looked exactly like what he was, an ex-cop turned private investigator who'd seen too much and slept too little. Gray stubble covered his jaw, his eyes were red, and his coffee cup was already empty despite having been filled when I arrived. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "I feel worse. What have you got?" Mason pulled out a tablet and swiped to a folder labeled MV Investigation. The screen filled with photographs, documents, and what appeared to be a timeline chart. "Your wife's been busy," he said. "The affair with Trentell started approximately 9 months ago, right after she joined that yoga studio. Turns out the good doctor's wife is a member there too, which is either incredibly stupid or incredibly arrogant on their part. Probably both. What else? Trentell's got a history. This isn't his first rodeo. I found 2 other women in the past 5 years, both married, both clients of his dental practice initially. Guy's got a type. Successful, attractive, married to men who work long hours." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Monroe's not one of his dental patients. No, but her friend Carmen is. Carmen's the one who introduced them at some yoga workshop about tantric breathing or some such bullshit. Carmen knew exactly what she was doing. Carmen Valdez had been Monroe's best friend since law school. She'd been the maid of honor at our wedding, godmother to the children we'd never had, a regular fixture at our dinner table for nearly 2 decades. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. "There's more," Mason continued. "Trentell's marriage isn't as solid as it appears. His wife Erin filed for separation 2 years ago, then withdrew the papers. My guess is she caught him cheating before, and he promised to reform. Any chance she knows about Monroe? Hard to say. She's been spending a lot of time at her sister's place in Bangor, supposedly helping with her new baby. Could be legitimate. Could be avoidance." I studied the timeline on Mason's tablet. The affair had escalated quickly. From casual meetings at the yoga studio to regular hotel rendezvous to weekend getaways, Monroe had disguised as work trips or wellness retreats. The progression was methodical, almost professional. "What's your read on Monroe's endgame?" I asked. Mason shrugged. "Could be she's just having fun, scratching an itch. Could be she's planning to leave you for him. The money she's been pulling out suggests she's either funding the affair or building a nest egg. Maybe both. And Trentell? Harder to pin down. Guy's got a good thing going. Successful practice, nice house, social standing. He might just be enjoying the thrill without planning to change his situation. Then again, he might be planning to upgrade from his current wife to yours." The thought of Monroe as an upgrade made my jaw clench. "What about their pattern? When do they usually meet?" Tuesday afternoons at the Riverside Motel, sometimes Thursday evenings at his office after hours. Weekend trips about once a month, always when his wife is out of town. They're not particularly careful. I think they've convinced themselves they're too smart to get caught. I finished my coffee and stared out the window at Main Street, watching the town wake up. Dog walkers, early commuters, the mailman starting his route, all of them going about their normal lives while mine imploded in slow motion. "What do you want to do with this information?" Mason asked. It was the question I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. The evidence was overwhelming, the betrayal complete. I could confront Monroe again, demand explanations and apologies that wouldn't change anything. I could file for divorce, split our assets, and start over at 45. I could try marriage counseling, pretend that 18 years of history was worth salvaging. Or I could do what I did best, build something. Not a house or an office building, but a plan. A structure designed not to shelter, but to demolish. "I want to destroy them," I said quietly. "Both of them. Completely." Mason nodded as if he'd expected this answer. "Legally?" "Legally, socially, financially, professionally. I want them to lose everything that matters to them. I want them to understand what it feels like to have someone you trust tear your life apart, piece by piece. That's a big project. I've handled big projects before. The key is proper planning and attention to detail." Mason closed his tablet and leaned back in his chair. "What do you need from me?" "More surveillance. I need to document everything. Every meeting, every lie, every dollar spent. I need evidence that will hold up in divorce court and destroy Trentell's reputation. And I need you to help me understand their weaknesses." "Weaknesses? Everyone has them. Monroe's is her image. She's spent years building a reputation as the perfect wife, the successful professional, the woman who has it all together. Trentell's is probably similar. He's the golden boy dentist, pillar of the community, devoted family man. They've both got a lot to lose. And you're planning to take it away from them." "I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve." Mason was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "You know there's no going back from this, right? Once you start down this road, your marriage is over regardless of what happens." "My marriage ended 9 months ago. I just didn't get the memo." He nodded and stood up. "All right, let's burn it all down." The first crack in Monroe's carefully constructed facade appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office at Hartwell & Associates, reviewing blueprints for a historic renovation, when my assistant knocked on my door. "Mr. Varlin, your wife's friend Carmen is here to see you. She says it's urgent." Carmen Valdez swept into my office like a woman on a mission, her yoga instructor uniform replaced by a business suit that screamed expensive lawyer. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her usually serene expression had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Finley, we need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "Do we? That's interesting, considering you've been helping my wife cheat on me for the better part of a year." Carmen's composure cracked visibly. She'd clearly prepared for denial and misdirection, not direct confrontation. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You introduced Monroe to Jory Trentell. You provided cover stories for their meetings. You've been enabling their affair from day one." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "The question is why you're here now." "Monroe told me you've been acting strange lately, paranoid. She's worried about you." "She should be worried about herself, and so should you." Carmen sat down uninvited, crossing her legs and attempting to regain her professional demeanor. "Look, Finley, I know you're upset. Marriage is complicated, and sometimes people need space to explore." "Stop." I held up a hand. "Don't insult my intelligence with New Age relationship advice. You helped my wife betray me, and now you're here trying to manage the damage. What I want to know is what's changed. Why are you suddenly concerned about Monroe's marriage?" Carmen was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming nervously on the arm of her chair. When she spoke, her voice was smaller, less confident. "People are starting to talk." "What people?" "At the yoga studio. Some of the other instructors have noticed Monroe and Jory spending a lot of private time together. And last week, Erin Trentell asked me directly if I thought her husband was having an affair." I felt a surge of satisfaction. The house of cards was beginning to wobble. "What did you tell her?" I told her she was imagining things, but she didn't believe me. She's been asking around, talking to other people. If she keeps digging, she'll find out the truth, and you're afraid that when she does, your role in facilitating the affair will come to light. Carmen's mask slipped completely. "I could lose my business, Finley. The yoga studio, my reputation, everything I've built. Most of my clients are married women. If they think I'm helping people cheat, you are helping people cheat. It's not that simple. Monroe was unhappy. She felt trapped, unfulfilled. When she met Jory, she came alive again. I thought, if she could explore these feelings, maybe she'd figure out what she really wanted. And if what she really wanted was to destroy our marriage, I hoped she'd realize that what she had with you was worth fighting for." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You hoped she'd have her fun and then come back to me, grateful and renewed. How very modern of you. Don't be sarcastic. You know I care about both of you. You have a funny way of showing it." I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. "What do you want from me, Carmen?" "I want you to give Monroe a chance to end this on her own terms. Talk to her. Tell her you know, but give her the opportunity to break it off with Jory and work on your marriage." "Why would I do that?" "Because 18 years should mean something. Because she's not a bad person, just a confused one. Because destroying her won't bring back what you've lost." I turned back to face her. "You're right about one thing. Destroying Monroe won't bring back our marriage, but it might prevent her from destroying someone else's life the next time she gets confused." Carmen's face went pale. "What are you planning to do?" "I'm planning to tell the truth. To everyone. Monroe, Jory, Aaron, your yoga studio clients, Monroe's colleagues at the law firm. The whole truth, with documentation. You can't do that. It would ruin everything. Everything's already ruined. I'm just making it official." Carmen stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "If you do this, you'll lose Monroe forever." "I lost Monroe 9 months ago. I'm just returning the favor." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalculating, trying to find a new angle of attack. What if I could get her to end it? What if I could convince her to cut off all contact with Jory and commit to marriage counseling? Too late. It's not too late. People make mistakes, Finley. Even good people. Even people who love each other. Don't let your pride destroy something that could still be saved. This isn't about pride. This is about consequences. Monroe made a choice, and now she gets to live with the results of that choice. Carmen's composure finally shattered completely. "Please don't do this. I'm begging you. Think about what this will do to everyone involved. Aaron doesn't deserve to have her life destroyed. Jory's children don't deserve to see their father humiliated. And Monroe should have thought about all of that before she decided to sleep with another woman's husband." The crude language hit Carmen like a physical blow. She stepped backward, her hand rising to her throat. "You're not the man I thought you were." "You're right. The man you thought I was would have quietly accepted his wife's betrayal and pretended everything was fine. The man you thought I was would have let Monroe have her cake and eat it too, would have been grateful for whatever scraps of affection she threw his way. But that man was an idiot, and he's gone now." Carmen walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." "Maybe. But I'll regret it a lot less than I'd regret spending the next 18 years married to a woman who thinks I'm too stupid to notice when she's cheating on me." After Carmen left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, staring at the blueprints spread across my desk. The renovation project was for a Victorian mansion similar to my own, a beautiful structure that had been neglected for decades, its foundation compromised, its walls weakened by rot and neglect. The owners wanted to restore it to its original glory, but my professional assessment was clear. The damage was too extensive. The house needed to be torn down and rebuilt from scratch. I pulled out my phone and called Mason. It's time to move to the next phase. What did you have in mind? I want to have a conversation with Jory Trentell, and I want Monroe's colleagues at the law firm to understand exactly what kind of person they're working with. That's going to get messy. Good. Messy is what they deserve. Friday evening found me at Murphy's Tavern, a dimly lit establishment that served as the unofficial town hall for everyone who preferred their gossip with a side of whiskey. I'd chosen the location carefully, public enough to ensure witnesses, intimate enough to allow for honest conversation. Mason sat at the bar, nursing a beer and keeping watch. My sister Barb occupied a corner booth, pretending to read a romance novel while actually recording everything on her phone. At exactly 7 o'clock, Monroe walked through the door, followed closely by Jory Trentell. They'd clearly planned to present a united front, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously they were taking the situation. Monroe had traded her usual professional attire for jeans and a sweater, an attempt to appear casual, approachable, reasonable. Jory wore khakis and a polo shirt that emphasized his gym-sculpted physique. They looked like a catalog couple, all-American and wholesome. They spotted me immediately and approached my table with the kind of determined stride people use when they're trying to convince themselves they're not afraid. "Finley," Monroe said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Jory remained standing, his hands shoved into his pockets. "I think we need to clear the air about a few things." "Do we?" I signaled the waitress for another beer. "I thought the air was pretty clear already. You're sleeping with my wife, she's lying to me about it, and now you're both here to try to convince me that I'm the problem." Monroe flinched at my language, but Jory's jaw tightened with what looked like anger. There's no need to be crude. There's no need to be polite either. Politeness is for people who deserve it. "Look," Monroe said, leaning forward with the earnest expression she used on juries. "I know you're hurt. I know this situation is painful for everyone involved, but we're all adults here. We should be able to discuss this rationally." Rationally. I tasted the word like wine gone bad. "You want to discuss your affair rationally. How very civilized of you." "It's not just an affair," Jory said, finally sitting down. "Monroe and I have developed genuine feelings for each other. This isn't some sordid fling. It's a real relationship. A real relationship built on lies, betrayal, and hotel room receipts. Very romantic." Monroe's composure began to crack. "You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage, to feel like you're just going through the motions, day after day, with someone who doesn't really see you anymore. I saw you just fine. I saw you every morning when you kissed me goodbye before going to meet your boyfriend. I saw you every evening when you came home from your yoga retreats smelling like another man's cologne. I saw you every time you looked at me like I was an inconvenience you had to tolerate. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, a sound that made several other patrons turn to look at us. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about the $15,000 you've stolen from our joint account to fund your relationship. Let's talk about the lies you've told my friends, my family, my colleagues. Let's talk about the 18 years I've wasted building a life with someone who was just marking time until something better came along." Jory leaned forward, his voice dropping to what I'm sure he thought was a threatening tone. "You need to calm down." "Do I? Are you going to make me?" "Because I have to tell you, Doc, I've been looking forward to the chance to have a physical conversation with you." "Nobody's threatening anyone," Monroe said quickly. "We're here because we want to handle this situation with dignity." "Dignity?" I shook my head. "That ship sailed about 9 months ago, but since you brought it up, let's talk about dignity. Does Erin know you're here? Does she know you're trying to negotiate the terms of your affair with my wife?" Jory's face went pale. "Leave Erin out of this." "Why? She's as much a victim here as I am. More, actually, since she has children to consider. Speaking of which, how are you planning to explain to your kids why Daddy's moving in with Mrs. Varlin? We haven't made any decisions about the future, Monroe said. Haven't you? Because Carmen seems to think you're planning to leave me for the good doctor here. And the money you've been squirreling away suggests you're preparing for some kind of major life change. Monroe and Jory exchanged a look that confirmed everything I'd suspected. They had been planning a future together, probably for months. The only question was whether they'd intended to handle their divorces before or after going public with their relationship. What do you want? Jory asked finally. Money? A quick divorce? What's it going to take to resolve this situation quietly? Quietly. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the table with deliberate care. You want to keep this quiet. Preserve your reputations, protect your careers, make sure your friends and neighbors don't find out what kind of people you really are. We're not bad people, Monroe said. We just fell in love at the wrong time. You fell in lust with someone else's husband while you were married to me. There's nothing romantic about it, no matter how you dress it up. Fine, Jory said, his patience clearly exhausted. We're terrible people. We've committed the unforgivable sin of finding happiness with each other. What are you going to do about it? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve. Which is what? You'll find out Monday morning. Monroe's face went white. What happens Monday morning? Monday morning, Aaron gets a complete dossier of your affair, including photographs, hotel receipts, and a timeline of your relationship. Monday afternoon, your law firm receives the same information, along with documentation of the money you've embezzled from our joint account to fund your extracurricular activities. Tuesday morning, the State Dental Board gets a detailed report about Dr. Trentell's unprofessional conduct with married women. You can't do that, Jory said, but his voice lacked conviction. I can, and I will, but that's just the beginning. I'm also planning to share the information with Carmen's yoga studio clients. I think they'll be very interested to learn how their spiritual advisor has been facilitating adultery. And of course, there's social media. Amazing how quickly news travels these days. Monroe was shaking now, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Finley, please, think about what you're doing. Think about the consequences. I have thought about them for weeks, and I've decided that the consequences of letting you get away with this are worse than the consequences of exposing the truth. You'll destroy us, Jory said. Yes, completely. And you think that will make you feel better? I considered the question seriously. I don't know if it will make me feel better, but I know it will make me feel like I have some control over my life again. And I know it will ensure that other people understand exactly who they're dealing with when they meet you. Monroe started to cry, not the pretty, delicate tears she'd perfected for courtroom drama, but ugly, desperate sobs that shook her entire body. Please don't do this. I'm begging you. I'll end it with Jory right now. I'll move out, give you space, do whatever you want. Just please don't destroy my career. Your career? I stared at her in amazement. That's what you're worried about? Not our marriage, not the 18 years we spent together, not the trust you've shattered. Your career. I've worked so hard to build my reputation. If this gets out, I'll never practice law again. You should have thought of that before you decided to practice adultery instead. Jory stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is pointless. He's made up his mind to be vindictive. Vindictive? I rolled the word around in my mouth. That's an interesting choice, not hurt or betrayed or devastated. Vindictive. As if my response to your betrayal is somehow worse than the betrayal itself. What do you want us to say? That we're sorry? Fine. We're sorry. We never meant for this to happen. And we're sorry you got hurt. You're not sorry it happened. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. Monroe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. What if we disappeared? Left town, started over somewhere else? Would that be enough? No. Why not? I stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and looked down at both of them, my cheating wife and her married boyfriend, sitting in a dive bar trying to negotiate their way out of the consequences of their choices. Because running away doesn't undo the damage you've done. It just spreads it around. Erin deserves to know who she's married to. Your law firm deserves to know what kind of person they've got representing them. The dental board deserves to know that Dr. Trentell has a pattern of inappropriate relationships with married women. This will ruin innocent people too, Monroe said desperately. Jory's children, Erin, my colleagues who had nothing to do with this. You should have thought of that 9 months ago. I walked away from the table, past Mason at the bar, past my sister in her corner booth, past the other patrons who'd been pretending not to listen to our conversation. At the door, I turned back for one final look at Monroe and Jory, huddled together in their booth like survivors of a shipwreck. "See you Monday," I said, and walked out into the night. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that makes everything look sharp-edged and unforgiving. I sat in my office at 7 a.m., surrounded by manila envelopes addressed to various recipients around town. Each envelope contained a complete dossier of Monroe and Jory's affair: photographs, financial records, hotel receipts, phone logs, and a detailed timeline of their relationship. I'd spent the weekend organizing everything with the same meticulous attention to detail I brought to my architectural projects. The first envelope went to Jory Trentell via certified mail. The second went to the managing partner at Monroe's law firm. The third went to the state dental board. By 8:30, I'd personally delivered copies to Carmen's yoga studio, the local newspaper, and 3 of the biggest gossips in town. By 9 o'clock, my phone was ringing non-stop. The first call came from Monroe. "What have you done?" Her voice was shrill, barely recognizable. "I told the truth. Revolutionary concept, I know." Erin called me screaming. "She's threatening to take Jory's children away, to destroy him in divorce court." Good for her. She deserves better than a serial cheater. The managing partner wants to see me in his office at 10. They're talking about suspension, maybe disbarment. Actions have consequences. Who knew? You're destroying innocent people, Finley. Jory's kids are going to suffer because of what you've done. Jory's kids are going to suffer because of what Jory did. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. The second call came from Carmen, sobbing hysterically. 3 of my biggest clients have already canceled their memberships. The yoga community is tiny, Finley. Word spreads fast. I could lose everything. You helped destroy my marriage. Now you get to experience what that feels like. I was trying to help Monroe find happiness. You were enabling adultery. There's a difference. The third call came from Jory himself, his voice tight with rage. "You've signed your own final verdict, you know that? I have friends in this town, connections. I'll make sure you never get another architectural contract." Threatening me now? How very professional of you, Doctor. This isn't over. You're right. It's just getting started. By noon, the story had spread through town like wildfire. Mason stopped by my office to give me updates. Erin had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of the children. The dental board had opened an investigation into Jory's conduct. Monroe's law firm had placed her on administrative leave, pending their own investigation. Carmen's yoga studio was hemorrhaging clients. "You've created quite a shitstorm," Mason said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "They created the shitstorm. I just made sure everyone could see it." "Any regrets?" I considered the question. Did I regret destroying my wife's career? Did I feel guilty about the impact on Jory's children? Was I sorry for the collateral damage to Carmen and others who'd enabled the affair? "No," I said finally. "No regrets." Monroe's been calling around town, trying to do damage control. She's telling people you had a breakdown, that you're not thinking clearly. Of course she is. It's easier than taking responsibility for her choices. Jory's taking a different approach. He's claiming you doctored the evidence, that the whole thing is an elaborate revenge fantasy. Let him claim whatever he wants. The evidence speaks for itself. My phone rang again. This time it was my sister Barb. Holy shit, Finley. The whole town's talking about Monroe and that dentist. Mrs. Patterson from down the street just called me for the full story. She wants to know if it's true that Monroe stole money from you to pay for hotel rooms. It's all true. Good. I never liked her anyway. Too perfect, you know? Always made the rest of us feel like slobs. Thanks for the support. Are you okay? Really okay, I mean? I thought about it. Was I okay? My marriage was over, my wife's career was destroyed, and half the town was probably talking about me behind my back. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. The afternoon brought a parade of visitors to my office, colleagues who wanted to express their support, neighbors who were curious about the details, even a few people I barely knew who felt compelled to share their own stories of betrayal and revenge. The most interesting visitor was Jory Trentell. She appeared in my doorway at 4 o'clock, her eyes red from crying, but her posture straight and determined. She was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'4", with short blonde hair and the kind of understated elegance that spoke of good breeding and quiet strength. Mr. Varlin? I'm Jory Trentell. I wonder if we could talk. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Of course, I'm sorry for what you're going through. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've destroyed my family to get revenge on your wife. Her directness caught me off guard. Your husband destroyed your family when he decided to have an affair with my wife. I just made sure you found out about it. Why? What did you hope to accomplish? I hoped to ensure that the people who'd betrayed us faced consequences for their actions. Aaron was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Do you know this isn't Jory's first affair? My investigator mentioned he had a history. 3 that I know of, maybe more. Each time he promised it would never happen again. Each time I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because I thought our marriage, our children, were worth fighting for. I'm sorry. Don't be. You did me a favor. I was living in denial, pretending that if I just tried harder, loved him more, he'd stop cheating. Your evidence made it impossible to keep pretending. What will you do now? Divorce him. Take him for everything I can get. Make sure my children understand that what their father did was wrong, that betrayal has consequences. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. Thank you, Mr. Varlin, for having the courage to tell the truth. After she left, I sat alone in my office as the sun set outside my windows. The phone had finally stopped ringing. The parade of visitors had ended. For the first time all day, I had silence to think about what I'd accomplished. Monroe's career was over. Jory's reputation was destroyed. Carmen's business was failing. Innocent people, Jory's children, Monroe's colleagues, even some of their friends, had been hurt by the fallout. Had it been worth it? I thought about the 18 years I'd spent with Monroe, the life we'd built together, the future I'd imagined we'd share. I thought about the months of lies and deception, the casual cruelty of her betrayal, the way she'd looked at me like I was too stupid to notice what was happening right in front of me. Yes, it had been worth it. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll pay for what you've done. I deleted the message without responding. Let them threaten me. Let them plot their revenge. I'd already won the only victory that mattered. I'd reclaimed my self-respect. I gathered my things and headed home to the Victorian house I'd restored with my own hands, the house where I'd lived with Monroe for 15 years, the house that was finally, truly mine again. Tomorrow I'd start planning my next project. Not a building this time, but a life. A life built on truth instead of lies, on self-respect instead of willful blindness, on the solid foundation of knowing exactly who I was and what I was worth. Monroe had taught me an invaluable lesson, though not the one she'd intended. Sometimes the only way to save something is to destroy it completely and start over. I was ready to start over.